Hello, today is VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, and today we're going to learn a little bit more about what VE Day is and where it comes from. So Victory in Europe Day, VE Day, took place on March the 8th, 1945. It was a public holiday and a day of celebration to mark the defeat of Germany by the Allied forces in the Second World War. VE Day marked the formal conclusion of the war with Germany and brought to an end 6 years of suffering, courage, and endurance across the world. How do you think it felt when the war was finally ended? It was time to celebrate. People ran out onto the streets, hanging bunting and banners and dancing. Church bells pealed across the country to share the news. Peace in Europe. Everyone brought out food to share at street parties. On Tuesday, May the 8th, was to be a national day of celebration, Victory in Europe Day. And today, being May the 8th, it's Victory in Europe Day still. The capital city, London, was the place to be on VE Day. Everyone who could reach the city did so. The centre of London was full of people wearing red, white and blue, waving flags, dancing and singing. Fireworks filled the sky with flashes of light. You could try this. Write a postcard to a missing family member telling them about your VE Day celebrations. Draw a picture on the other side to show what you did and what you saw. If you do that, please do send it into Class Dojo. The German war is at an end. On VE Day, everyone, both in London and at home sitting by their wireless sets, wanted to hear just one man, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill at the time was the Prime Minister. At 3 p.m, the Prime Minister broadcast to the nation, the war was over. The German war is at an end. Crowds gathered in Trafalgar Square and up the Mall. They were waiting for Winston Churchill and King George VI to make an appearance on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. If you want to, you can try this. Make your own radio broadcast to announce victory in Europe. You could even pretend to be Winston Churchill. And if you look online, you'll be able to find some of the announcements that Winston Churchill made around the time. This is your victory. Shortly after Churchill's speech, King George VI, Queen Elizabeth and the two princesses came out onto the balcony at Buckingham Palace. Churchill told the crowds, "This is your victory." It was to be the first of 8 appearances by the King and Queen on VE Day. If you want to, you could try this. Make your own radio broadcast to announce victory in Europe. You could even pretend to be Winston Churchill. So I've got a clip here from the BBC. Show a little bit more what it was like on VE Day.
By 1945, the Second World War had gone on for nearly 6 years of bloodshed and sacrifice. But things were beginning to change. Following the success of D-Day, the Allied armies in Western Europe from Britain, France, Canada and the United States started to advance on Berlin from the west. Meanwhile, Soviet forces were attacking from the east, leaving Nazi Germany surrounded. On the 7th of May, 1945, Nazi German officials agreed to a complete surrender. Special issues of newspapers were printed to announce the surrender, and news that the war in Europe was finally over spread very quickly. Details circulated that the next day, the 8th of May, would be a public holiday known as Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day. On VE Day, the Prime Minister Winston Churchill and the royal family appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. They were met by a huge crowd and chants of "We want the King" for the reigning King George VI. The royal family made 8 appearances on the balcony that day to celebrate with the people, and dancing, music, and other celebrations continued into the night. Alan recalls seeing the celebrations in London as he went on his paper round the next day.
People had sing-songs, bonfires, no bonfires allowed for 6 years. And here we are with all this timber. People have carried piano and other musical instruments out into the street, and there's been a lot of jollity. But I went to bed reasonably early because I've got to get up at 6 and get this news out. And I went round my paper round where everyone had a bonfire in the street. I kicked the embers back in and got all the fires going again. And that was my contribution to VE Day. Everyone had one thing in common, they'd all survived. And it was very, very happy.
But even though the war had ended in Europe, VE Day was not the end of the Second World War. Fighting continued in the Asia-Pacific region. While Germany had surrendered, Japan continued to fight. The US had developed a terrifying weapon called the atomic bomb. In August 1945, they used this bomb on the city of Hiroshima in Japan, destroying almost the entire city. 3 days later, another atomic bomb was dropped on the Japanese city of Nagasaki, resulting in even more devastation. On the same day, troops from the Soviet Union fought their way into northern China, which had been ruled by the Japanese since 1931. Wanting to avoid further destruction and unable to stop the Soviet advance, Japan called for an end to the war and surrendered on the 15th of August 1945. This became known as VJ Day, Victory over Japan Day. Did you know VE Day and VJ Day marked the end of hostilities and that soldiers, sailors and airmen would soon be coming home? But just because the fighting was over didn't mean everything had been fixed. Rationing continued until 1954, nearly 10 years after the war had ended. And many women were not allowed to keep the important roles they'd taken on during the war. Despite the widespread celebrations after the war, many people also had bittersweet reactions. They had lost so much in the conflict. Their homes, their friends, and, for some, their family. Alan lost his mother in the war during a bombing.
At the time, the feel was keep a stiff upper lip, you're not to show them that you're upset, and I didn't. But years later, I was, because there's nothing like your mother in terms of warmth and encouragement, and that we missed.
The war had come to an end, and the Allies had been victorious. But for everyone who survived, their lives had been changed forever.
Okay, so let's figure out what you've learnt about VE Day. On what day was Victory in Europe Day? It was May the 8th. Good job. Why did people wear red, white and blue? They're the colours of the German flag. That was all they could find. They looked pretty. They are the colours of the Union Jack. Make your choice. They are the colours of the Union Jack. Who mingled secretly with the crowds on VE Day? Was it Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret? Was it Winston Churchill? Was it King George VI? Or was it Neville Chamberlain? It was the princesses, and Princess Elizabeth is now our Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. Why did people ring church bells? for practice, because they're tuneful, to spread the news and celebrate, or to tell the time. Make your choice now. It is to spread the news and celebrate. So what are you going to do to celebrate VE Day today? There was a couple of ideas in the PowerPoint earlier that you could try and upload your recordings or your postcards onto Class Dojo, but there's a few more ideas that you could do today or over the weekend. You could take a moment to reflect on the things that you're grateful for. Please do share them with us on Class Dojo, or you could design a medal for VE Day. You could say a quiet prayer to yourself or with your family. Could make something special for dinner. Could call a relative who was alive during the war, or write an open thank you letter for those who fought or suffered during the war. So choose what you want to do and let us know on Class Dojo.